I remember the day someone I trusted the most walked away. No warning, no explanation, just silence. And in that moment, it felt like my whole world collapsed. But life was teaching me something I didn't want to hear. Nobody owes you support. Not your friends, not your family, not even the world. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Because sometimes, the people who walk away are the reason you finally learn how to walk alone. And that's when it hit me. Solitude isn't a punishment, it's preparation. So today, I want to share with you 7 powerful truths that will help you stop seeking validation, reclaim your strength, and finally choose yourself, even when no one else does. The first key point is this: no one is coming to save you. That realization doesn't arrive gently. It usually hits when you've exhausted yourself waiting for someone to notice your potential, to encourage you, to open a door, to believe in you just enough to make the journey less lonely. You sit there thinking, if just one person believed in me, I could make it. But life, in its tough mercy, keeps you waiting until you finally understand it's not their responsibility. Nobody is obligated to see your greatness before you do. That awakening is brutal, but it's also the beginning of true freedom. For most of us, the habit of waiting starts early. We're raised to seek approval from parents, from teachers, from bosses, from society. We're taught to play it safe, to rely on systems, to stay in line. But life isn't a classroom, and there's no teacher grading your effort. The world doesn't stop because you're tired, and success doesn't knock on your door because you're deserving. It comes when you decide to knock on your own door. The moment you stop expecting someone else to carry your dream, the moment you stop waiting for permission, that's when movement begins. Not because the world suddenly opens up, but because you finally do. When I first realized this, it felt unfair. I thought, why do I have to do everything alone? Why doesn't anyone help me? And then it hit me. The universe doesn't reward dependency, it rewards responsibility. The more you take ownership of your path, the more powerful you become. The ones who rise don't do it because they had help. They rise because they build strength to the absence of it. Every time life refused to hand me support, it handed me an opportunity to grow muscles where weakness used to live. The absence of help became the birthplace of self-mastery, and you'll notice something strange. The moment you stop begging for support, people start noticing your strength. Because strength attracts respect, while neediness repels it. You see, when you stop depending on others to validate you, you become magnetic. People can sense when you're grounded in self-belief. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. You move differently, speak differently, carry yourself differently. You're no longer chasing, you're creating. And the world can't ignore a person who builds without needing applause. But here's the truth no one likes to admit. Self-reliance isn't glamorous in the beginning. It's lonely, messy, confusing. You'll doubt yourself. You'll make mistakes that no one helps you clean up. You'll cry in silence and question if you're strong enough to do this alone. But that pain, it's proof that you're growing. Because the process of becoming your own savior isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be transformative. You're breaking the dependency patterns that have kept you small. You're learning to trust yourself when no one else does. That's the kind of fire that forges unstoppable people. So yes, no one is coming to save you. And that's the best news you'll ever hear. Because it means you don't have to wait anymore. You don't need the approval, the hand, holding, or the validation. Everything you've been waiting for was never outside of you. It was always inside, buried under doubt, fear, and hesitation. The day you stop looking outward for rescue is the day you begin walking inward toward power. That's when you realize you were never abandoned by life. You were being prepared to discover your own strength. The second key point is this: validation is a trap. It's one of the most subtle prisons we live in, and the scariest part is that most people never realize they're trapped. We've been conditioned from childhood to seek approval. A gold star, a pat on the back, a good job. Somewhere along the way, that external praise became our oxygen. We began measuring our worth through someone else's reaction. But here's the truth that stings. The moment your confidence depends on how others see you, you've handed them the keys to your peace. You become a puppet, pulled by invisible strings, smiling when they approve, shrinking when they don't. We live in an age where people measure their self-worth in pixels. Likes, shares, comments, followers. A person's entire mood can shift based on how a photo performs. Think about that. We've reduced our identity, our soul, to a number that refreshes on a screen. The problem isn't technology, it's attachment. The moment you crave validation, you give strangers the power to define your value. Someone scrolling on their phone at 2 a.m. suddenly has the ability to influence your happiness. You don't even know them, yet their silence feels like rejection. That's how easily we surrender our peace. Not because they took it, but because we offered it. And the chase never ends, does it? You post one picture that does well, and you feel amazing, but now you're under pressure to do even better. You perform not because it's who you are, but because it's what they expect. You stop living for joy and start living for applause. The performance becomes your identity, and the applause becomes your addiction. What we forget is that applause fades. People move on. The audience that once cheered for you today might boo you tomorrow. Not because you changed, but because their attention did. And if your self-worth is built on that unstable ground, every silence will feel like an earthquake. But imagine this. What if you stopped chasing validation and started creating from authenticity? What if you spoke your truth without wondering how it would be received? That's real freedom. Because validation isn't the same as connection. People may like your picture, but never understand your pain. They may admire your success, but never respect your struggle. When you stop trying to please everyone, you begin attracting the ones who truly see you. Validation attracts attention. Authenticity attracts alignment. There's a difference. One fills your ego, the other fills your soul. There's a quiet strength that comes when you stop performing. When you wake up one day and realize you no longer need to be seen to feel significant. That's when the noise fades and your inner voice grows louder. You begin to trust your instincts again. You create because it feels right, not because it looks good. You speak because it's honest, not because it's popular. That kind of self-trust terrifies the world because it can't be manipulated. The system that once controlled you, approval, judgment, comparison, loses its grip the moment you realize you are already enough without it. And here's the paradox. When you stop craving validation, you actually become more magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need to be liked. Confidence built from within shines louder than any compliment. It's not arrogance, it's peace. You stop chasing validation and start radiating certainty. And that energy, it's untouchable. It's the quiet declaration of someone who has finally understood that true worth isn't found in the world's approval, It's found in your own acceptance.
The third key point is this: loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. Most people see loneliness as something to escape, as if being alone means something is wrong with them. But solitude isn't a sign of failure, it's a sacred space life creates when it's trying to transform you. There are seasons when the world goes quiet, not because you're forgotten, but because you're being rebuilt. When everyone walks away and you're left staring at the ceiling wondering why no one stayed, that's not abandonment, that's alignment. Life is making room. It's clearing out the noise so you can finally hear your own voice without interruption. Loneliness has a way of stripping you down to the truth. It exposes what's real and what's not. In company, it's easy to hide behind laughter, distractions, or noise. But in silence, you meet yourself, unfiltered, unguarded, undeniable. You realize how much of your identity was tied to people, how often you needed their presence to feel whole. It's uncomfortable at first, even painful, but that discomfort is necessary because it breaks the illusion that your worth depends on companionship. The strongest version of you can't be born in a crowd. It's born when it's just you, your thoughts, and the rawness of reality staring back. There's something powerful about learning to sit in your own company without feeling empty. When you can enjoy your solitude, you take away the world's ability to make you lonely. You stop chasing conversations that drain you and relationships that keep you small. You start choosing peace over presence. Because not everyone who sits next to you contributes to your life. Some people fill your space but empty your soul. Solitude teaches you that being alone is far better than being surrounded by people who make you feel invisible. It sharpens your intuition. You begin to recognize what deserves a place in your life and what was only passing through. Think about how nature works. The seed grows in darkness before it ever reaches sunlight. The caterpillar hides in a cocoon before it becomes a butterfly. Even the stars we see at night are born in cosmic silence. Creation always begins in isolation. So why do we fear the same process within ourselves? We call it loneliness, but it's actually transformation. That quiet time where no one texts back, no one notices your work, and no one claps for your effort, that's not the end of your story. That's the chapter where you evolve quietly, where your roots grow deeper than anyone can see. And what's incredible is that once you embrace solitude, you start to hear whispers you never noticed before. Ideas come, clarity comes, healing begins. You start understanding your patterns, your wounds, your desires. You stop begging for closure and start giving it to yourself. The loneliness that once terrified you becomes your teacher. It shows you how strong you can be when there's no one to lean on. It introduces you to your inner resilience, the kind that can't be shaken by distance, silence, or rejection. You begin to realize that the quiet isn't empty, it's full of answers. So the next time life isolates you, don't rush to escape it. Don't fill the silence with noise or distraction. Sit in it, breathe in it, let it do its work. Because that isolation isn't life punishing you, it's preparing you to see clearly, to move differently, to rise independently. It's not a season of loss, it's a season of strengthening. The version of you that will emerge from that silence will be wiser, calmer, and more grounded than the one who entered it.
The fourth key point is this: self-reliance is power. Real power isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not about dominance or control, it's about stability. That deep knowing that even if everything falls apart, you can rebuild. Too many people confuse support with survival. They think they can't move unless someone walks beside them. But self-reliance is about understanding that the only constant you'll ever truly have is you. When you develop the strength to depend on your own mind, your own discipline, and your own will, you stop fearing loss because you realize nothing external defines your stability anymore. Self-reliance doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean pushing people away or refusing help out of pride. It means recognizing that your foundation can't be borrowed. Imagine a house built on someone else's land. It can be taken at any time. But when your house is built on your own ground, storms may come, Roofs may leak, but the foundation remains. That's what self-reliance is. Building your foundation so strong that even if life strips everything away, your sense of self stands untouched. It's not about ego, it's about independence of spirit. You stop being easily shaken by people's opinions because your stability isn't up for negotiation. The truth is, depending on others for emotional, financial, or mental security often creates invisible chains. You might not see them at first, but they control how you move, think, and decide. You hesitate to take risks because you're scared of losing approval. You silence your voice because you're afraid of disappointing someone. That's the cost of dependency, freedom. But when you start relying on yourself, those invisible chains begin to break. You no longer move to please, you move with purpose. You don't ask, will they support me? You ask, will this align with who I am? And that question changes everything. You'll notice that the people who truly thrive aren't the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who learned to create something out of nothing. The ones who didn't wait for the right conditions, the right partner, or the right timing. They used what they had, where they were, and turned it into something meaningful. Self-reliance teaches you to stop complaining about resources and start becoming resourceful. It turns every setback into strategy, every obstacle into opportunity. Because when you stop waiting for someone to hand you a solution, your creativity awakens. You stop asking, who will help me? And start declaring, I'll figure it out. And here's the secret. When you master self-reliance, your energy changes. You stop chasing and people start respecting. Because independence has gravity. It draws admiration without demanding it. Others can feel it when you move from a place of self-assurance. You're no longer needy, you're steady. You're no longer desperate for company. You're selective about who gets access. You give out of choice, not obligation. You help because you can, not because you must. That's the kind of quiet authority that can't be faked. It's built through the fires of doing it yourself, through the discipline of not quitting when no one showed up. The journey to self-reliance is never instant. It's forged through countless moments of discomfort, paying your own dues, facing your own fears, fixing your own mistakes. But each time you handle what you once thought you couldn't, you reclaim another piece of your power. You begin to trust yourself more deeply. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start saying, I failed before and I'm still here. That's strength. That's freedom. That's the kind of inner power no one can ever take away. The power that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you have you. The fifth key point is this: people leave, but purpose stays. It's one of the hardest truths to accept because we build so much of our identity around the people we love. Friends, partners, mentors, even family, they all play roles in shaping who we are. But as time passes, you realize that some of them were only meant to walk with you for a while, not forever. It hurts when people drift away, when someone who once promised forever becomes a stranger. But the lesson life quietly teaches through those losses is this: you can't anchor your destiny to people who were only designed to teach you a chapter, not carry your story. Every person in your life serves a purpose, but not every person is part of your purpose. Some come to inspire you, some to challenge you, others to break you open so you can rebuild stronger. Yet, too often, we confuse their role in our journey with their permanence. When they leave, we collapse, not because they took our purpose with them, but because we had mistaken them for our purpose. We made their presence the source of our motivation their approval the measure of our progress. But when the applause stops and the faces disappear, your calling remains untouched. Because your purpose isn't built on people, it's built on principle. When you lose people, you start to see who you are without them. You discover how much of your life was lived through their eyes, how much of your joy depended on their validation, how much of your confidence leaned on their reassurance. And when all of that fades, what's left is you, the unfiltered, unedited you. That's the moment you meet your true self. Painful, yes, but pure. Because the absence of others forces you to look inward, to reconnect with what truly drives you. Purpose doesn't vanish when people leave. It becomes louder, clearer, sharper. It starts to whisper, know that they're gone, it's time to build from within. You see, purpose has this beautiful way of surviving everything. Heartbreak, betrayal, loss, failure. It's the only thing that never abandons you. It might hide for a while, buried under disappointment, but it's always there, waiting for you to remember. The mistake most people make is trying to replace people instead of rediscovering purpose. They fill the void with distractions, new relationships, new faces, anything to avoid the silence. But that silence is sacred, because in that stillness, you start hearing what you were too busy to notice before. The mission you were born with, the fire that once drove you, it's all still there, waiting to be reignited. And here's the truth: people are meant to leave because growth demands it. You can't climb to the next level of your life while clinging to those who belong to your past season. Some departures aren't betrayals, they're divine direction. Life removes what no longer serves your path. When someone exits, it's not rejection, it's realignment. You might cry, you might resist, but eventually you'll see the pattern. Every loss cleared space for something greater, something truer, something more aligned with who you're becoming. Purpose doesn't shrink when people leave, it expands, because now it has room to breathe. The real peace comes when you stop trying to hold on and start trusting that your purpose is enough to sustain you. You realize that even if every familiar face disappears, the vision remains. Even if the hands that once held you let go, your calling doesn't fade. It keeps pushing, guiding, pulling you forward. People are seasons. They change, they pass, they move on. But your purpose, that's your lifetime. It's the pulse that keeps you alive when everything else feels uncertain. It's the one relationship you can never lose, the one that will never walk away.
The sixth key point is this: silence the inner doubt. That voice inside your head that whispers you can't, you're not ready, you're not enough. It's not telling the truth, it's repeating old fears. Most people spend their lives fighting external critics, but the loudest enemy is the one that lives within. You can't outrun it, you can't ignore it, but you can retrain it. Because that voice isn't your enemy, it's your history. It's every moment you failed, every time you were told you couldn't make it, every disappointment stored in your subconscious, waiting to be proven wrong. The real battle isn't between you and the world, it's between you and that voice. Inner doubt doesn't arrive overnight. It's planted early, by comparison, by rejection, by the moments you felt unseen. Over time, it becomes your default soundtrack. You start questioning your decisions before you even make them. You play small not because you lack ability, but because you've been programmed to believe safety is better than potential. But here's the truth: safety is just fear dressed as comfort. The life you want won't grow in comfort zones. It requires you to silence the doubt long enough to take one bold step, just one. Because every time you choose courage over hesitation, the voice of doubt grows quieter. Think about how many dreams die, not because people lacked skill, but because they lacked self-belief. They talked themselves out of greatness. They convinced themselves they weren't ready, weren't qualified, weren't worthy, and so they never tried. Doubt is persuasive, it sounds rational. It says, wait until it's perfect, you'll embarrass yourself, what if it fails? But it never tells you, what if it works? Doubt always predicts disaster, never destiny. It tries to protect you from pain, but ends up protecting you from growth. The key is not to eliminate doubt completely, it's to act even when it's screaming. Because confidence isn't the absence of doubt, it's the decision to move despite it. There will be moments when your inner critic sounds louder than your inner warrior, when your mind tells you to quit, to play safe, to stay quiet. That's when you must remember you've been here before. You've faced things you thought would break you, and yet you're still standing. That's evidence. Every scar, every comeback, every silent victory is proof that you've already beaten doubt 100 times. The problem is you forget your own history of resilience. The voice of fear gets amplified because you stop listening to the voice of truth, the one that says, I've done hard things before and I can do them again. To silence inner doubt, you must learn to feed your mind differently. You can't expect strength if you constantly consume weakness. Stop surrounding yourself with people who reinforce your fears. Stop repeating words that disempower you. Speak to yourself with the same encouragement you'd give to someone you love. You'd never tell your best friend, you're not enough. So why say it to yourself? Replace self-criticism with self-coaching. Replace hesitation with preparation. Every time you talk back to your fear with action, you rewire your brain. You start believing not because someone told you to, but because your results prove it. The voice of doubt never disappears completely, it just loses its authority. You begin to recognize it not as truth, but as a signal that growth is near. Doubt shows up every time you step into something bigger than yourself. That means you're expanding. And the more you expand, the less that voice controls you. You start trusting your instincts, your decisions, your timing. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start saying, what if I fly? Because deep down, you already know you've always been capable. You've always had what it takes. You just needed to turn down the volume of fear long enough to hear the sound of your own strength. The seventh key point is this: you are enough, completely and unapologetically. Most people spend their entire lives searching for something outside themselves to complete them. A relationship, a title, a dream, a validation. But the truth is, you were never meant to be completed by anything or anyone, because you were never incomplete to begin with. Somewhere along the way, society convinced you that you had to earn your worth through success, beauty, approval, or achievements. And so, you started chasing wholeness like it was hidden somewhere out there. But every chase leads back to the same realization. Nothing external can fill a space that was never empty. When you begin to understand that you are already enough, something inside you shifts. The anxiety to prove, the rush to compare, the constant fear of falling behind, all of it begins to fade. Because when you know your value, you stop auditioning for acceptance. You stop bending yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for your truth. You start walking differently, speaking differently, deciding differently. Not out of arrogance, but from clarity. Clarity that says, I may not have everything I want yet, but I'm still whole. That's the kind of confidence no applause can create and no rejection can destroy. It's the quiet, steady belief that you're not in competition with anyone else because you're already enough as you are. The reason so many people feel broken isn't because they are, it's because they've been told to measure themselves by standards that were never theirs. The world glorifies comparison. It teaches you to look left and right instead of within. You scroll through other people's highlight reels and begin to think you're falling behind, forgetting that your pace has nothing to do with theirs. Every soul has its own timeline. The oak tree and the rose both bloom, but never at the same time. When you understand this, you stop rushing to catch up and start trusting your rhythm. Being enough isn't about being perfect. It's about being at peace with your imperfections while still evolving toward your potential. There's incredible strength in self-acceptance. Because when you accept yourself, your scars, your quirks, your flaws, you rob the world of its power to shame you. You no longer shrink when someone points out your weaknesses, because you've already made peace with them. You start seeing your cracks not as damage, but as design. Every scar you carry tells a story of survival, and every imperfection adds texture to your authenticity. You don't need to be flawless to be worthy, you just need to be real. The world doesn't connect with perfection, it connects with honesty. And when you live from that truth, your presence becomes magnetic, because it's rooted in wholeness, not need. But embracing your enoughness doesn't mean you stop growing, it means you stop growing from emptiness. There's a difference between improving yourself because you hate who you are and evolving because you love who you are. One comes from lack, the other from abundance. When you love yourself as you are, growth becomes joyful instead of painful. You no longer chase change to feel worthy. You evolve because you already are. You become your own source of validation. And that's when your energy becomes unstoppable. When you're no longer trying to prove anything, but simply expressing everything that you are. And maybe the most liberating truth of all is this: nothing and no one can add to or subtract from your worth. Not a failed relationship, not a lost opportunity, not even your past mistakes. Because your worth was never built on what you achieved. It was built into your existence. You were born enough. That truth doesn't change with circumstances. It just gets buried under years of self-doubt and comparison. But once you peel those layers back, once you remember who you were before the world told you otherwise, you realize something profound. You never needed fixing, you only needed remembering. And now when you step back and look at it all, every heartbreak, every silence, every rejection, every lonely night, you begin to see the pattern. Life was never against you, it was shaping you. Every person who left, every challenge that broke you open, every moment you doubted yourself, they were all chisels carving you into the person you were meant to become. You weren't being abandoned, you were being awakened. You don't need anyone to validate you. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to chase completion through someone else's eyes. Because everything you've been searching for, the strength, the peace, the clarity, it's been sitting quietly within you all along, waiting for you to notice. You are not missing pieces. You are the whole puzzle. So, stop apologizing for outgrowing people who chose comfort over growth. Stop dimming your light to make others feel at ease in their shadows. Stand tall in your truths, even if it means standing alone. Because standing alone in your authenticity is far more powerful than standing with a crowd that demands your silence. Life will test you again and again. That's its job. But now you know the truth. No matter who walks away, no matter what changes, no matter how hard it gets, you have you. You have your purpose, your power, your voice, and that's enough. You were never meant to be rescued. You were meant to rise, and when you finally understand that, truly, deeply, that's the moment you stop surviving and start living.